George Groves joins me on Talking Pints. George, welcome.
Nigel, thank you for having me on.
Or should I call you Saint George?
Well, yeah, that was my ring name.
Yeah, I know.
Not quite so saintly now. A little bit fresher faced as well in that video than I am now as well.
But, I mean, how cool a moment was that?
It was incredible, like an incredible moment. It's a weird one for me because you're trying to take in this like monumental, event. Like it was breaking history at the time, but at the same time you're about to have a tear up. You've got a ring walk and then you got to go to battle. So you don't really want to get too consumed by this crowd and the atmosphere and waste energy on the adrenaline. Yeah, so you because I'm ring walking first. I'm the challenger, so I get in there. They'll go wait for Carl to come out, maybe a national anthem or two. So it might be like 15 minutes before the first bell goes, but. It was an incredible feeling. It's essentially why you get into boxing is for that buzz, that feeling, that performance.
You were, clearly it was martial arts, I think, that got you into boxing originally, wasn't it? Yeah,
so I wanted to. I love boxing, always wanted to box, but probably a bit too young to box. So at 7, my dad took me to a local kickboxing club. Fell in love with just combat sports in general. I love kickboxing, love the discipline, love the idea that you had to work your way along to get a black belt. And then at the age of 10, I started at a local boxing club, did both for a few years, and then at 13, the boxing coaches were saying, "Hey, man, you might have a future here.
Yeah.
Let's knock this kickboxing rubbish on their head and let's focus on boxing." So,
and what did this mean for your? What did all of this mean for your school career?
Yeah, I mean, I did well at juggling both till it sort of started to get a little bit serious, probably about the 13, 14 mark, where there's no time for homework. And I was forgiven from the parents that I was never under pressure to do homework because I got in from school, I quickly threw my dinner down my neck, and then I was out the door to the gym, and I wouldn't get in until 9 p.m. into bed. I think for my entire teens, I was either in the gym at school or sleeping. So, I decided at, 14, 15, that actually boxing is the future. I always dreamt it became more than just a dream. Started to get selected to go to international tournaments and stuff like that. So, school sadly had to take a bit
in
of
a way,
burner.
And this happens to a lot of sportsmen, I think, in a way, if at a young age you get focused and you've got ambition, and I presume your ambition was you wanted to be world champion one day?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You kind of lose your childhood almost, though, don't you?
Yeah, no, you did. It's childhood. I mean, I don't feel like I lost my childhood because I really enjoyed my childhood. I got to travel the world as a kid. Even before then, when I was really younger, we'd be up and down the country on these tournaments. So you'd be in Barnsley one week, Newcastle the next, and so I got to travel, and I was, with like-minded individuals, guys my own age, travelling boxing. When you get to the end of your teens, that's where you might feel like you're missing out. That's usually when most boxers lose the plot because they want to have a beer and they want to go out with their friends when really they've got to be at home resting or in the gym working. Yeah,
and boxing used to be great amateur career, but that moment you turned professional must be quite a serious moment in your life.
Yeah, no, it was a wonderful moment for me, really. I'd signed with David Hay. A Haymaker set up their own promotion. He was the unified cruiserweight world champion, so a great role model for me. Someone, there in the flesh. He's essentially what I'm hoping to become. He quickly then moved to heavyweight and became a star. Wins a heavyweight world title within a year, and I'm sort of in his slipstream, trying to absorb all the learning process. I was just like a sponge, seeing how he dealt with the big occasions, how he dealt with the big nights, how he prepared for the big fights. All the while, the goal was there to become world champion.
Was there. Yeah, no. Clearly, you were very, very driven, and you become Commonwealth champion, and you're on the rung. But then it's the big time, isn't it? It's the tilt at the world title against Carl Farage, who had a just fantastic, amazing boxing career. Tell us about the first fight with Farage, the controversial ending.
Yeah, so me and Farage still go on tour talking about the controversial first ending, which he paints in a different picture than I do.
Funny that.
Yeah, but I became mandatory challenger for his IBF world title. He had 2 world titles at the time, WBA and IBF, and I'd actually fell out with my long-term trainer manager Adam Booth, who looked after David Hay and taking care of all the sort of stuff I needed to deal with, you know, in the business side of stuff of boxing, 10 weeks out from the fight. So it was liberating for me, because all of a sudden now I step up to the plate. You know, essentially every time you walk through the ropes, you're the man in the arena. You have to take the punches. You have to dish out the punishment. So the head was focused, driven. You know, this is a lifelong dream that I'm now 10 weeks away from fulfilling. I'm up against it. I'm an underdog. You know, everyone's favouring Farage. Everyone thinks he's going to win. So he's the A side of the card. But I backed myself, believed in myself, and I shocked a lot of people that night. It didn't quite go my way. Very controversial ending. So anyone who hasn't seen it, I dropped Farage in the first round pretty heavy. He gets up, takes quite a shellacking for the rest of the fight. And then we get into sort of the championship rounds, near the 8th or 9th round, and Hal Foster, the referee, who I have sort of forgiven since.
Well, sport and controversy, but you go back, you have a second fight with Carla. We looked at some of the amazing, extraordinary footage of Wembley. And you have to say, George Groves, you're very persistent. Because you had 3 tilts at this world title. And it wasn't until the 4th attempt that you won it and you became the super-middleweight boxing champion of the world. Were there moments there when you thought this is never going to happen? Yeah, I mean, there's little wobbles. There was never any sort of denial of the belief. Like, I always believed I was good enough, you know, and every fight I'd ever had, I always felt I could have won or should have won, or, you know, something went wrong, whether it was my fault or not. So I knew I was good enough. It was like, am I going to get there? Is it going to happen? And, you know, sometimes... You must have been getting more nervous each time you went into those bouts. Yeah, I think so. So I was really nervous for the 3rd attempt. I was out in Vegas. I was fighting a guy called Badu Jack, who's a very good fighter. He's now a freeweight world champion. He's the current cruiserweight world champion, the oldest cruiserweight champion in history. But at the time, he wasn't a big name. And I was probably the favourite going out there, but he was on a Floyd Mayweather undercard. He was a Floyd Mayweather fighter. It's out in Vegas. Yeah. So again, there was a lot to contend with, and I dropped a split decision. It was close. I probably could have boxed better, but that was tough. You think getting knocked out at Wembley Stadium in front of 80,000 fans, everything is like the worst you can get. But for me, this was a new rock bottom. But still, dream was there. But you kept going. Exactly, dream was there. The belief was still there. And just had to show the resilience. So back on the horse, I get some good wins back together, back in a mandatory position. Finally get my chance to challenge again against Fedor Chudinov, a Russian, former champion at Bramwell Lane in Sheffield. And it was meant to be, I think. You're still smiling. I'm still smiling. He broke my jaw that night. Well, this is what I'm going to ask you about. Because you win, but you also got a broken jaw in winning. Yeah, so, Chudinov, for anyone who hasn't seen the fight again, he doesn't look too much, but wow, the guy was strong. And I've been there with strong guys. I've been there with Farage. I've been there with De Gale and many others. But the strength of him was pretty incredible. And it was hard to back him up and get some breathing space, you know. At the end of the 3rd round, he rolls a nice right hand that comes over, catching me on the button. I hear a loud crack, which I know what that means. Mouth fills with blood. You can't shut your mouth because the gum shield and teeth are all in the way. I get a cut across the eye, the same side in the 4th round. So you were lucky to continue in this fight, really? Well, I mean, it is you're going out on your shield at this stage. You know what I mean? It's like, it's now or never. It really felt like it. It would have been really tough to have come again, and it would have been almost impossible to leave the sport without winning a world title at this point. Well, you won it. You did it. You won it. And did you make lots of money out of it? After that, once you've got the belt, you earn a few more quid. So I went into a tournament after that. I'd achieved all my goals, Nigel. I'd won that world title, that elusive world title at the 4th attempt. Yeah. But obviously, I wanted a bit more for the legacy, maybe a few more titles and a few more money to put aside from myself and my kids, which I fortunately managed to do in the next 3 fights. And you've got out of boxing pretty much unhurt. I hope so. You never know. I mean, because it is. I mean, let's face it. You know, and I know one of your opponents was, very seriously hurt in a bout. It's a pretty. I mean, look, I love it. I think I've seen you boxing before. I was up against Derek Chisora, but he didn't really hit me. But look, I love it. I love supporting the sport. I love to go to the sport. It's great. But, boy, there is a downside, isn't there?
Well, yeah, certainly. It's a brutal sport. Essentially, it's two, male or female now, unarmed combat. You're trying to render the other guy unconscious. So, but there's something simplistic about that and something beautiful, and definitely something that's all-encompassing and it captures the public's imagination. You'll see people from all walks of life in boxing gyms, and it's a drug that's pretty addictive. You know, it has its downside, but in terms of what it does for people, in terms of the upside of it, is pretty incredible.
It's also for people wanting to get fit. You know, boxing training is becoming a really big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I heard you earlier talking about an obesity epidemic. It's the fantastic all-body workout, because the more calories you're burning is the brain power, because no one actually wants to get hit in the face. So sure, it's upper body, lower body. You're trying to move your feet, you're trying to let your hands go. So you've got that physicality, but also just the idea of so many components working at once. You get a fantastic workout, mate.
Now, you've retired as a professional boxer, but you clearly still train, you still keep in shape.
Yeah, I don't do any boxing training because that'll be depressing. You know, I'm not as fast and sharp as I used to be, but I'm in the gym trying to keep healthy. I try and volunteer down at my amateur boxing club, so I go down there on Sunday morning, see the next generation coming through, which is really great. My old coach, Mick Delaney's still down there, 70-odd years of age, still ducking and diving and slipping and sliding. So that's where I get my boxing fix, my boxing.
And personal life, George, tell us about Sophie, when you first met Sophie.
Yeah, it's not mad news to me, but yeah, me and Sophie are childhood sweethearts. I've known her since we were preschool.
So 3 or 4 years old?
Yeah, luckily for her, I didn't grab onto her at 3. She had a bit of a life before I got hold of her, but we dated a bit in our teens, and then, from about 18, we've been together. So happily married, 10 years now, two wonderful kids. So, yeah, and it's lucky for me that she was part of my whole boxing career, really. She was in and out as an amateur. It took a while for her to adjust to what living with a fighter's like, but she was there for my entire professional journey.
No, amazing. And so what next? What does George Groves do next? Because you're only in your early 30s.
Yes, I mean, if anything, that's an organic segue for me to plug my podcast. I've got
go on, do it.
George Groves Boxing Podcast is out every week, so we have guests on from the boxing world who come in, and we have a little deep dive into a boxing type scene. So we've had trainers on talking about pad work, fighters on talking about sparring, this, that and the other. So everywhere you get your podcast, you can get onto that. If not, I love to, as I say, dip my toe in. If I can be on the telly covering the fights, live, that's great.
Well, let's get you on your toes, because I have got some questions that have come in for you from the audience. Liam asks, what would you do differently if you could go back to the Farage fights?
I wouldn't let him hit me with that right hand. I'm throwing a hook, and I'm not really a left hooker. So it's weird. I think the root of a lot of my misery at the time actually stems from the first fight, because it felt like a win, even though it wasn't. And I was walking around thinking I'm a champion without a belt, thinking that the problem came at Wembley. It didn't. It probably came before. But I wouldn't change that first fight. It still gets a lot of people in the heart.
It was a huge event.
It was, yeah.
At the time. Sue asks, Nigel and George, if you could have... this is to both of us, this one. If you could have changed profession, what else would you like to have done?
I certainly wouldn't want to do your job, buddy. I think that's hard. A politician, that is has a terrible job. I think the only thing that can possibly trump the buzz of boxing would be a rock star. But I can't sing or play.
George Groves, rock star, I knew it. And Sue, for me, my careers master at school recommended that I be an auctioneer. I think I might have been quite good at that.
Actually, yes, I can see that.
Wasn't a bad recommendation at all. Let's do one more. We got time. John asks, what is the food... this is good. What is the food you crave most during your fight preparations?
It was quite hard to wean myself off sugar. So, it would take literally 3 days of, cold turkey to come off the sugar. Chocolate. So it's for me, chocolate. Anything chocolate, if it's inside or it's in the house, it would be a danger to me. Yeah. So I had to have a bare cupboards while I was in camp.
One quick fire, last one. Sarah asks, what advice would you give to up-and-coming boxers?
I think, I mean, not so much as cliche as believe in yourself, but my story essentially is unwavering self-belief and resilience. It took both those, became the pillars of my career to finally achieve my goal of winning the world title at the fourth attempt, because boxing in particular, but sport in general, it's tough. You will face setbacks, but keep the self-belief and stay resilient.
And you did it. And thank you for being a guest on my show. Terrific.